Well, I am Jennifer Holmes, president of MIS Solutions, and it's so nice to see you here in person. How does it feel? Is awesome? Cool. Good. Is this some of your first time kind of out in the world? You don't have to raise your hand or point to your neighbor. Okay, but it feels good. It feels so good to just be here and be connected with you. And I thank you for your time today. So welcome. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the program and, of course, introduce our guest speaker. About 13 years ago, we created this program called Tech Exchange. And it was really, it was born out of this idea. You know, John Maxwell says great leaders bring everyone across the finish line together. And that's really what this is about. If you think about technology, it's complicated. It's a pain in the neck. It's constantly changing, so there's a lot to keep up with. So we created this forum, this event that we call Tech Exchange, to really equip business leaders today to know what's going on, what do we need to know, just distill it down, give me the 10 things I need to know. How do I prepare my business? How do I protect my business? How do I protect my people? How do I take advantage of opportunities? So that's really what it was prepared, how it was created, if you will, sort of how we founded it. So, and we have some of our long-term clients that say, Jennifer, we need Tech Exchange, we need Tech Exchange. And so we make sure we keep this program going. So, and we try to pack it into like a power-packed vitamin for you because there's so much to know, so much is changing. 18 months ago, was, tough for us, for all of us, right? 18 months ago, when everything shut down, it was really, really hard. And it opened up a door. It opened up the door for cybercrime. We had seen cybercrime, we have our finger on the pulse, and we have for many, many years, but it really, really escalated that. So we felt like this would be a good opportunity for this Tech Exchange to talk a little bit about what's going on, what do you need to know, how do you need to prepare, and is this something I really need to think about, and what are some practical things we can do? So here's my promise for you today. My promise is that you'll walk away with a better, deeper understanding of where we are, what's going on, and what can you do, and what do you need to do. Right? What is your provider doing, and what do you need to do as you have conversations about cybersecurity with your vendors and with your clients, because they're asking those questions. How many people are getting questions from their vendors and their clients about their cybersecurity posture? Show of hands, anybody? Yeah, like a lot of people. So we want to be ahead of the curve, which is why we did this program. So now, enough of Jennifer. We're going to move to introducing Liam, our guest speaker. Now, Liam is the CEO of MIS Solutions, and he is a certified ethical hacker. He's one of our favorite hackers. He wears a white hat, not a black hat, so he's a good guy. So what I'd like to share with you is he has over 9 high-level cybersecurity certifications, and he's been on this journey for probably 15 years now. And I wanted to share a couple with you, and then why he's done this and why we as an organization have done this and put so much emphasis on training and certification in this area. In addition to being a certified ethical hacker, he's a certified chief information security officer, a chief information system security professional, which there's very, very few of those in the world, and they have a lot of continuing education requirements to maintain that. And he's a computer hacking forensic investigator. So he's actually licensed to go and do investigative work and testify on things. So I asked him years ago, because he's a nerd, let's just be real, and I can say that because I'm his wife, okay? So, and I'd say that in the most endearing way. You're my nerd. I love you. Can you fix this? Because I'm the one that breaks everything, right? So I said to him years ago, I said, why are you obsessed with all of this stuff? Why are you obsessed with all of these certifications and all of this knowledge? And he goes, Jennifer, it's simple. It's very simple. He said, I have to outrun the bad guys. If we're going to protect our clients and we're going to protect our business, we have to be 3 or 4 or 10 steps ahead. And so that's why he's the super nerd. So anyway, I got a little personal there, and it's all good. That's how we talk about each other. It's all good. So with that, if you will, please help me welcome Liam to the stage.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. So, Jennifer's right? This is something that we're going to start to see a lot more of. And I want to kind of give you guys a little bit of context before we kind of get into, what it is that we're dealing with, right? And you guys probably see it at a level in your business where you're starting to get questions from your customers, from your vendors, from your insurance companies, right? And there's a good reason for that. And I want to talk a little bit through that. And so I'd like to probably start with an exercise if I could, right? So $500. If you lost $500 in your business, would this be something that would concern you? But by show of hands, who would worry about getting taken for $500? A couple people, right? All right. How about $150,000? Would that start to get your attention? Yeah? $342,000. Are we now starting to get to the point where we're paying attention? And so let's talk a little bit about each of these three things, right? So the $500. There's a lot of social engineering that goes into something called social graphing around how these campaigns are run, right? Most people, for $500, they're like, man, that's stunk. Can't believe I fell for it, but we're probably not calling the FBI, right? In fact, a lot of employees offer to pay back the money to the company that they work for if they fall back because they kind of feel bad about it, right? And that's kind of the intent with the gift card scam, is that it's a personal attack at an employee level. It's designed for, a receptionist. It's designed for an assistant. It's designed for somebody who really, doesn't have a full purview. And it's enough money that it's worth the effort, but it's not enough money that you're really going to, call the police or do something or file an insurance claim. Look at the payroll fraud, right? Payroll fraud is something that is becoming more popular. And one of the things that you're starting to see, and it's starting to be exposed, is that people are using personal email addresses because they don't want to use business email addresses with some of their vendors. And when they do that, they obviously are sidestepping all of the protections that they have. And when you look at payroll fraud is now we're not targeting an employee, we're really targeting a department in your organization, right? The people who are in accounts receivable and accounts payable, right? Maybe even possibly, trying to exploit a relationship between you and a vendor, right? And then when you look at invoice manipulation is a tricky one because I'm trying to get in between the relationship between you and a customer, right? In other words, I'm banking on the fact that even if I fell victim, even at $342,000, which is not nothing, would I risk a $5 million account over it? Probably not, right? And so you end up in these conversations where the customer says, I paid my bill. The vendor says, but I didn't get the money. And the customer says, well, I don't know if you didn't get the money, but I paid it, right? And that's actually the intent of invoice manipulation. It's to get in between that relationship between you, and a customer, or you and a vendor, and to see how far and how much and how loud you're willing to be and who you're willing to call. Now, I'll tell you, we've had customers fall victim to all three of these, and the numbers I'm putting up on the screen are real. I didn't make these up. Over the last 9 months. A lot of companies don't want to talk about this, right? I don't want to tell you that we were, victim of a payroll fraud, right? Because all of a sudden you start to question what we're doing and the kind of people we have in our we don't want to put that on the front page, right? But it gives you a sort of a sense as to what's happening. And so let's look at this from a different perspective. Right now, we're looking at a ransomware breach, every 11 seconds in the United States. I bet if we actually asked, and I won't, but if we did, I bet everyone around each table has a few people who know somebody, right? The malware, if we look at 2019, the increase between 2019 and 2020 was 358%. Would you like your company to grow 358%? That'd be pretty good. But how about if we look at from 2020 to 2021? 966%. And this kind of goes back to one of those comments Jennifer made about, hey, when the pandemic hit, this was a great opportunity because it was that time of confusion, that switchover, that opportunity cost when employees went home. They were using their home machines. They were using what they had to conduct their business. And there was a lot of changes happening in order to be able to get people back to work so that they could meet the commitments for their customers. That's the definition of opportunity, right? And we could look at a lot of these other different statistics to go with this, the 36 billion records that are exposed. By the way, that's 7 records for every human on Earth, right? We could look at the 86% of data breaches that were financially motivated. We could look at the 60% of our total that are targeted at the small businesses, right? We can look at it a different way, right? If I look at this globally, we're at $600 billion. That's $77 a year for every human on Earth. That represents nearly 1% of our total GDP. Right? Now, let's look at this a different way for a second. Let's look at this from a cost perspective. Right? You guys remember JBS? This is the people who had the problem with the meat packing plant. Right? We went to Publix, couldn't get any meat. Say, what's going on? Well, it turns out meat supply company got hacked. They ended up paying $11 million, right? You guys remember Colonial Pipeline? Went to the gas station, no gas. Everybody starts posting. You look at Gas Buddy, nobody has any gas, right? $4.4 million. Kia Motors. You probably didn't know about this one, because the first two impact you at the consumer level. Kia Motors, we keep that one quiet. All you know is that if you went to go to the car lot and they didn't have the car you wanted and they told you you had to wait 6 months, 18 months, you waited. We have a chip shortage, right? $11 million. There's lots that you don't hear about, right? Here's just a few examples, right? Buffalo Schools had an exposure of 34,000 students, right? $40 million for an insurance carrier. Exagrid, which is interesting because they're a backup company, right? $2.7 million. Let's look at it a third way. So we've looked at this now, from our statistics. We've looked at this from our finance. Let's look at it this way. Where's it coming from? Right? 38% of all breaches start in phishing. Now, there's another statistic we'll talk about here in a minute, but remember this graph, 38%, right? Let's take healthcare as one sector. So in healthcare, we have the Department of Health and Human Services. They have a friendly little office over there called the Office of Civil Rights. And one of the things that you have to do in healthcare is if you have a breach that's 500 records or more, you have 60 days to report it. And the thank you for doing so is they put your name on a website. And that's the law. So I went in as I was pulling this together. This is just Georgia. And if you look, there's probably people on here you know. These are people in our community. I'm looking at Atlanta, Norcross, Buckhead. This isn't happening in Michigan, right? What's also interesting is if you look at the last column, It shows us how. Email, email, email. It's the point of origin. And if you look at these companies, the other thing that's also very interesting is these are not billion-dollar companies, right? These are small doctor's offices. These are practices. This is your dentist, right? Look at the likelihood of getting caught. 0.05%. If I knew that I could steal as much money as I wanted, and the chances of me not going to jail are 99.995%. No wonder it's exploding at 966% growth rate. What a deal, right? We actually had one, a little side story. We actually had an incident happen a few weeks ago. It was $600 million, largest crypto attack that we've seen to date. The attacker felt bad about it and gave the money back. When does that ever happen, right? So think about the statistic a different way, right? 1 out of every 2,000 gets caught. The other 1,999 get to keep your money, get to do it again, right? So that's actually pretty good. I added a slide yesterday because I wanted you guys to know about something else that's happening. You guys all know about ransomware. We all do, right? That's probably the thing that has been the most dangerous thing to our business, right? Because it encrypts your backups, it encrypts your entire system. They ransom it back, the amount of money they ransom it for. They actually check your bank account before they ask for the ransom. No sense in making sure you can't afford it, right? In fact, one of the new trends is they'll actually look at an insider in your company. They'll offer them $1 million to install an application. They'll share the ransom with an inside employee looking for somebody who'd be willing to do that. So one of the things that's now coming is something called killware. You guys will start to hear a lot about this. So ransomware is around making sure we disrupt your business. It's around making sure that we can extort data back to you. Killware is not. Killware is literally, we're trying to kill you, right? How much is that worth? Water plants, water supply, food supplies, electrical grids, hospitals, airports, public transportation. These are the new targets, right? This is something that's still developing. Again, I added this slide literally yesterday. We're starting to see this. So the question at some level really comes down to, okay, great, that's awesome. We're all going to die. What do we do about it? Right? There are some practical things. And I'll tell you, we've spent the last probably 9, 10, 12 months really digging into this. It's been a problem, but we're at the point where internally we ourselves are calling this that crucible of crisis. We're at the point where we're actually watching businesses go out of business, right? Here's what I can share. Number one, cybersecurity starts at the top, right? As leaders in your organization, know that it is your responsibility to usher in a culture of security, right? You guys are leaders. Security is a people, a process, and a technology problem. It is not just a technology problem. We all think it's a technology problem. It's not. When I say it's a people problem, what I mean is we have to make sure that we're doing due diligence around our folks and that we're training our people to know that they have some sense as to what they should and shouldn't do. We need processes so that when they see something that they know is wrong, that they have a defined process that they know that they can execute to bring that to your attention. And then, of course, we have the technology one. I'll tell you, and if you look back at those 3 examples I gave right in the beginning, we're attacking people and process. These are your human firewalls. Your human firewalls are the most vulnerable, right? I'll tell you, if I borrow another phrase from John Maxwell, a good leader knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. You as a leader, you first have to know what to do. You have to be willing to do it yourself. And you have to be willing to show others how they can also be safe. If I look at the companies that have gone out of business, if I look across our partner community of the 2,500 other IT companies that we know across America, when I see companies going out of business, it is rarely, not never, it is rarely a technology problem. It is a people and process problem. Okay? I bet you guys didn't know that Pooh Bear was the original hacker, right? He started all of this, I'm sure of it, right? It's because he understood the power of the honeypot, right? And if you look at what's happening, right? Honeypots in today's sense, not in a traditional sense, in today's sense, honeypots are the things that attract hackers, right? They're easy to hack, and they have lots of valuable data in it. Here's an example. So we've been talking about email. We looked at phishing, remember 38%, right? 90% of all breaches actually start with an email. Why is that? Because you remember, not 10 years ago, we all had our own email servers in our own businesses. And Office 365 came along and, well, for $1.27, who can do it for that? Nobody. And so Office 365 was invented. Everybody moved their data into Office 365. And for a long time, we were telling our customers, whatever you do, do not participate in Office 365. It was the largest attack surface on the planet, right? And you can see even today, 90% of all breaches start with email. How? You guys know, right? They're public clouds, small businesses, financial institutions, healthcare, insurance. These are the guys that are getting attacked. They're clicking on links inside an email, right? That's how this is happening, right? There's a saying in the hacker community. Hackers don't break in, they log in. Gone are the days, nearly, of breaking into anything. Because I can just call you on the phone and ask you for your password, and you'll probably tell me. Or I can send you an email that says, your Office 365 password needs to be changed. It's going to expire in 2 days. Click here to change your password. And the first form that comes in says, enter your current password. Right? This is how it's happening. Right? These are the websites, the links that you see. Reused passwords is a big one. You know, when you're using passwords from one system to the next system to the next system because they're easy to remember. 81% are reused passwords. And by the way, they can all be bought, right? Phishing scams, that's what we talked about a minute ago, right? If we look at how we protect this, right? Office 365, Microsoft in general, the pandemic, I think, was actually really good for them from a product perspective, right? If you look at Microsoft Teams 2 years ago, it was a horrible product, right? And they had no interest in doing anything about Microsoft Teams. Well, pandemic came, remote working, good. Need lots of teleconferencing, good. Zoom has security issues. They poured $6 billion into Microsoft Teams. Actually, it's a pretty good product. Well, guess what happens with email? If all of a sudden people like me are saying, hey, listen, whatever you do, Office 365, don't go that way, right? Microsoft starts developing tools and policies, right? And so Microsoft has developed a policy-based approach to security. Now, the tricky bit is, thank you, but it's turned off by default. You've got to go in and you have to know what to turn on, how to turn it on, how to configure it, how to monitor it. That's all on you. But at least you now have the tools. 3 years ago, there weren't even any tools to turn on, right? So one of the things that we did is we went in and we developed 22 essential security policies. I actually checked yesterday because somebody was asking about the number. This number changes all the time, right? I think we're up to 36, right? As something happens, Microsoft creates, oh, we didn't know about that. Here's a new policy, right? And so this then becomes an iterative approach of making sure that you're going back and looking at how Office 365 is configured, what the current policies are, what's gone away, what did they replace it with, and how do you need to constantly make sure that your platform is secure, right? Another component of this is MDM, Mobile Device Management. So Microsoft bought a product from another company and they renamed it. It's called Microsoft Intune, right? Microsoft Intune is the MDM, the Mobile Device Management platform. And before Microsoft did this, there was a bit of a fraction in our community in terms of what was the right MDM, who was the right vendor, who was doing things that we thought would be scalable, that would be protective, that would be auditable if I got stuck in a compliance situation. And there was no clear winner. But we kind of go back to the pandemic, we write a few checks, send everybody home, they write a bit of code, out pops Microsoft Intune. And Intune is actually not only a pretty decent product, but they're now able to capitalize on that Office 365 platform as a service that they're now pushing out, right? And so if you look at what's happened, it allows us to create policies around access control, device encryption. It prevents the use of jailbroken phones, right? It allows something called geofencing. If I take a phone outside of a geography, it's going to notify your manager to let you know that phone should not be there, right? There's lots of policies that are around this. You now have a way of enforcing those, internet user acceptance policies around, is the device encrypted? Do I require, multi-factor authentication? Do I require encryption? What applications do we not allow on our phones? And it handles the age-old question of, yes, but my employees have their own personal phones, right? What control do I have over their personal phone versus, a business phone? And so MDM with Intune has the ability to differentiate between a personal device and a corporate device. Intune has certainly taken the lead when it comes to mobile device management. And this is probably only the last 5, maybe 6 months, right? Something else that's popped up as we look at the phishing is something called DMARC, Domain Messaging Authentication Reporting and Confirmation. This is why we call it DMARC, by the way, right? And so we don't say all that, right? But it has an interesting twist to it. You can go in and you can configure what's called a DMARC record, and it's just some text. You don't have to pay anybody anything to do that. However, when you do that, you actually lose the insight to how your email is being used. I'll give you a good example, right? We think of things like how much spam is in my mailbox, who's impersonating one of my employees, gift cards, invoice fraud, right? We think of it that way. But let me ask you another question. Who thinks of it in terms of who's impersonating your organization and sending emails out that look like they came from you to your customers? Anybody think of it that way? That's what DMARC is about. DMARC allows you to not only see the inbound email, but more importantly, it allows you to report and see who's sending email that isn't you, that's pretending to be you. Think about invoice fraud and think about that psychology about how do I get between the customer and the vendor, right? This is how I know. Another new technology that's come into play is the use of artificial intelligence. Now, I think the last time, and it's been about 2 or 3 years that we had Tech Exchange before said pandemic, one of the things I shared with you guys was artificial intelligence was just coming onto the scene. And one of the things that they had reported was that 60% of all applications within the next 36 months would have some component of artificial intelligence. Here's an example. Now, probably my glowing first thing, and if I could put this on here, I would tell you, artificial intelligence at no level ever supplants training a user. However, it is an assistive control, right? And so the way that this artificial intelligence product works is in every email in your inbox, at the top, it puts a banner, a red, a yellow, or a gray banner. It looks at the language patterns. It looks to see if there's look-alike domains. It looks to see if the spelling is right. It looks to see if you've ever communicated with this person before. It looks to see if through your social graph, your social network, what's the likelihood of you knowing this person? Or is this a cold email? And it scores it. And in front of the user, what it does at the top is it puts this red banner telling you, hey, we know this is bad. A yellow banner, hey, be caution, be careful. A gray one, you're good, you've talked to this person before. It's assisting the user in making the decisions that we've tried to train them to do all along. Now, what's interesting is it has some built-in training that goes with it too. So take, for example, I have a red one, right? If they click on the link anyway, or if they click a little thing at the top, instead of them going to the website that has the link on it, it actually pops up a page and says, let me tell you why this is bad. Let me tell you why I blocked it. Let me show you a screenshot of what that website would have looked like if I let you click on it, right? And it's sort of that inline training, one email at a time, where people can see real live examples on every email, right? This is pretty new. And again, if we kind of go back to that 90% of all emails start with, or breaches start with an email, this is a great way to combat some of that, right? So if you look at Office 365 as a summary, right, you have to apply those 22 security policies we talked about. You need to make sure that we're protecting your end devices, your phones, your tablets. That's mobile device management. You got to make sure you're looking at your DMARC so that you can not only stop impersonation, but you can see who's trying to impersonate you. And you need to use artificial intelligence to help, end users better be able to spot what fraud looks like, right? Let's talk about insurance for a second. But before we do, I know we have some customers who are in insurance, and I know we have customers who sell cyber insurance. I know many of you probably have questions about cyber insurance. And so could you do me a favor? If you're in insurance, if you sell cyber, we don't. If you sell cyber insurance, would you mind raising your hand so that other people would know that they could come and talk to you if they needed to? Awesome. Thank you for doing that. I can tell you from a forensics perspective, what you should be talking to your insurance company about. Every company is different. What you do and how you do it, these are conversations you need to have with your agent. And you need to make sure that this isn't what I'm going to call a Me Too agent, right? We sell insurance because our buddy sells insurance, right? Find somebody who specializes. Find somebody who knows the subject matter, right? You need to talk about these different policies, phishing policies, social engineering policies, invoice manipulation, forensics work, business interruption, litigation coverage, right? There's lots of different things on here that you need to talk about, and these are great talking points. One of the things that Jennifer is going to offer you guys at the end is to actually give you this bulleted list as a takeaway that you can have a conversation. And I can tell you, the people that are in this room that sell cyber insurance, I'd recommend all of them. They're all great companies. They're all slightly different. But if you don't have somebody that you trust, somebody that you know knows the subject matter, somebody that you know that you can rely on, depend on, I would encourage you find one of these people who raised their hand. One of the things that's happening in insurance is this whole underwriting requirements, right? Stan and I were actually discussing this in the hall, literally right before this, right? And one of the things that happened in 2020 is all of a sudden these insurance companies were losing money selling insurance. That's not really a great business model. You can't lose money every time you sell one, right? You can't be in business very long. And so what's happening is these companies are now coming back and they're saying, hey, by the way, one of two things. One, we're out. This is too expensive. We're exiting the market. Two, if we are going to stay in it, this is going to be a shared risk model, right? And we're going to ask you to do a lot of crazy things in order to be able to write insurance. And if you don't, we won't write it. And even if we do write it, your premium's going to go up 200, 300, 400, 500%. And the coverage is going to go down by a factor or magnitude of 10 or 50, right? And so there's a no-win here because, insurance is a transference of risk, right? So you can say, look, we've done all the great things that we all should have done. I mean, it's not like JBS and Colonial Pipeline weren't spending tens of millions of dollars to protect their infrastructure, and yet they still got hacked, right? So it's not like this. It's not like this is infallible. It's not like you can become unhackable, right? And so what you do when you get to that point is you say, we need to transfer the balance of that risk, and we do that through insurance, right? And so if I look at the things that our customers are getting asked, right? The first bucket is these technical controls, right? Do you have multi-factor authentication, right? So multi-factor authentication is, a combination of what I know, like a password, and what I have, like a cell phone or a key fob or something like that, right? Do I have MDM on my cell phones? Do I have something called EDR, right? Which is sometimes referred to as next-gen antivirus, right? Am I conducting annual vulnerability assessments? A vulnerability assessment doesn't mean that you've been breached. It just simply means I could be susceptible to because of the version of X that I'm running, the version of Windows, the version of Adobe Acrobat, the version of .NET Framework, right? Nobody's taken or stolen anything, but I have a potential. I have some risk. And that's what a vulnerability assessment is. And we talked a little bit about administrative controls before, right? These are the things that people are exploiting, right? So user security training, finance controls, incident response plans, risk analysis, disaster recovery plans. Now, I'll tell you, when you look at those administrative controls, the number one thing that our customers always say is, that's an IT problem. It's not. This is a leadership issue, right? When we think about risk analysis, right, there are things in here that are related to IT, but what if you had somebody steal? Remember I told you about how these hackers are offering $1 million? That's a risk. That's not a technical problem. That's an administrative control. This is around training. This is around auditing, right? And so these insurance companies are getting really clear about this is what you need to do in order for us to be able to write insurance, right? One of the things that you can see that's happening, and it's right at the beginning of happening, frameworks equals forgiveness. If you hear nothing else I say on this slide, remember that. Framework equals forgiveness. And so there are some frameworks that are out there that are now starting to dominate, become that acceptable use. It's the one everybody looks at and says, that's the standard that will audit to, right? And the two standards are the NIST 800-53, and these are really around security control driven, right? And the other one is the ISO 27001 standard. These are less technical in nature, and they focus more on risk. We ourselves have adopted both frameworks, but we prefer and we mentor our customers through the NIST 800-53 framework. That one it's the one that provides the most protection, right? And so one of the things that you see that states are now doing is they're now calling for safe harbor. There's a recognition that says, hey, I have done all I can do. I have done everything in this framework. And I still had something happen. I'm not negligent. I did the thing, right? And so if you look, Ohio, Utah, and Connecticut now have safe harbor where they say, if you have fully implemented these frameworks, that we will provide forgiveness. We will not hold you responsible. Your insurance company will not hold you negligent, right? Now, you could say that backwards. If you didn't do these things and something happened, your insurance company is going to say, yes, but you didn't do your part. And you can see that beginning in that previous slide where we talked about them looking at these technical and administrative controls, right? Again, we got to think about this from a business perspective. You can't pay out more than you receive because you won't be in business, right? So what have we done in terms of trying to protect you guys over the last 18 months? I told you guys Microsoft went away and did a whole bunch of stuff. Well, guess what we did too, right? And so the first thing we did was our technical staff went out and we have completed 95 certifications that are all security related across our disaster recovery teams, across our response teams, our help desk teams, our after hours teams, our data center teams, right? Because we understand it starts with knowing what to protect and how to protect it. There's a certain language and there's a certain amount of the law that you need to know in order to be able to know what you can and can't do. And that's what these certifications are really aimed at. We had a third-party auditor come in, and we became SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. SOC 2 Type 2, there's two types, obviously, because there's got to be a Type 1 before you can be a Type 2, right? So Type 1 says, I have all of the controls, right? And I can show them to you. Here they are. Mm-hmm. Type 2 says, hey, I have these controls, and a third party actually has seen I'm using these controls, and I have work products that illustrate the use of all of these control sets. So SOC 2 Type 2 is what you really want, right? We looked at what's called network microsegmentation and network segmentation. And what that means is that we have tools that we use, right, to support you guys. When we need to be able to do remote sessions, look up a password, look up documentation. Well, if I was going to attack me, I'd want access to all of that stuff. Probably lots of great things in there, right? And so not only do we do those vulnerability assessments, not only do we go through the SOC 2 Type 2, but We take each of those systems and we put them on separate networks, and we don't allow those networks to talk to each other, so that there's no collusion or cross-collaboration, right? What we did for all of you guys, and you guys probably saw this, is at every single customer in every single office, at our own expense, we replaced every single firewall. And we did that to make sure that we had the latest and greatest technology at the endpoints to make sure that you guys were protected, right? And you guys probably remember some of that. We did a bunch of other things. These 22 security policies I talked about earlier, right? I will tell you, these are there's thousands of hours, devoted to creating and configuring and documenting and testing. Because these security policies are kind of like Windows updates, right? They're not all good, and some of them have unintended side effects. What do you mean I can't? Well, sorry, oops, uncheck that box, right? And so we went through and created these security policies, right? Microsoft also published what's called a SOC event list, where there's Windows events that are now recognized as ones you need to monitor, that are indicators of something happening. We deployed, there's over 600 of them. We deployed these to every server and every laptop that we're monitoring for these events. We went through and we had to develop some technology around disk encryption. Now, we use the regular disk encryption, that's not the tough part. But we had to develop a process, some software around what we call key escrow. And key escrow says, it's great that you encrypted my hard drive, thank you, but my laptop died, and I need to put that hard drive in the new laptop to get data off of it. Uh-oh, it's encrypted. I now have data loss that was self-inflicted because my laptop died. And so we now have a mechanism for encrypting and storing those encryption keys for every hard drive, so that we can unencrypt and gain access to that data for assets that we manage, right? These policies we talked about for Microsoft Intune and for DMARC and for artificial intelligence. We also had to develop, remember we talked about the people, process, and technology? We had to develop some significant processes around two things. One we call Code Red and one we call significant event. Code Red means that we have an all systems down significant event that's happened. This affects everybody, right? And so we develop policies and procedures. We create scenarios. We do tabletop exercises in our teams to be able to rehearse what would happen if. We also have a significant event that says, hey, the world didn't blow up, but something really significant happened. How do we handle that, right? Can't handle them the same, different level of intensity, but how would we handle that? And this is kind of where we talk about these tabletop exercises. We have at our leadership level participants that create these scenarios and run these tabletop exercises to ensure that from our help desk to our account managers to our engineers doing the work, to our after-hours people, to our disaster recovery people, to our incident response people, that everybody understands the process, they understand their role, we understand how to mitigate loss.
So, have you all learned a few things? Yeah? Hopefully you're not scared. Like, I know it's Halloween, but, here's something I heard in a WPO meeting as action cures fear, right? So we're not trying to make you scared here, just so you know. So he covered a lot of ground. We purposely kept it very high level for you. We didn't get in the speeds, flashing lights, so we did that on purpose. A couple of things I wanted to just kind of share with you just to have that awareness so you kind of know the scope of the problem and you know what to do about it and how we can help you, of course, to do that. So just a quick reminder, I'm going to go through this pretty quick because we're going to get to the most exciting part, which is the Q&A, right? Because I think the Q&A is really where it kind of ties all together. So many of you know that we love to educate, and awareness, is very important. So Many of you know we send out monthly newsletters about some of these things. We have our account manager updates, so you'll get emails from your account manager. And we also send out security alerts. So, we get everything ready, and then new security things come out. So you're probably seeing security alerts that come out from Liam as well. So please take a look at those. If you have questions, give us a call. And the next thing I want to talk about is technology business reviews. So many of you know, many of you that have been here a long time, our account managers call you and say, based on how your business is pulsing, let's have a conversation about these things. So what you're going to see is your account managers are going to talk to you about these things. What Liam kind of did is he vision cast for us. He said, this is where we are, this is where the world's going, these are some of the things you need to think about. So I like things really simple. Who likes things really simple? A few people like things really simple. So what we did is we did a couple of things for you. And by the way, I saw some of you taking notes, which was awesome. Carol will be sending out the presentation here and what I'm about to share with you too, just so you can share with your other team members and that sort of thing. I know that'll be super helpful. But I like simple. So what we did is Liam went into detail. And so we created a very simple form here, not really a form, more of a chart on a cybersecurity roadmap. So the thought here was you could use this to say, yep, I've checked the box on Next-Gen AV. Yep, we're talking about it at the leadership level. Yep, we're doing our security awareness training. We're not doing a set it and forget it. So we created this aid for you, and we hope you find it helpful. So that will be available for download for you. And then the other thing we created that Liam referenced is a checklist for the insurance, so you can have a conversation with your agent, because we think that's super important, super, super important. You're going to be shocked to know we still know people that think cybersecurity insurance is like optional. We've been talking about it for a long, long time, and if you see something, say something. So please have that conversation, and please have that conversation. The way you can tell the people that really know it and those that don't, if they just say, here it is, then you probably know they're just selling you something. If they sit down and have a conversation with you and talk to you about your business and help customize and find the right carrier and the right things, then that's going to give you a hint that you've got somebody that really knows their stuff. So again, we've got experts in the room. We would love for you to work with them. The other thing that we've done is, was anyone intrigued with all the 22 security policies that Liam talked about? Probably. So we also put together a list of those. I think it's like 36 policies, always evolving. So we'll have that available for you too. The purpose of this program is to just make you aware and provide resources for you, and then you work at your pace to get those things done for your organization, because I know you got a lot of things pulling at your brain and pulling at your attention, because it's a new time right now. I mean, who's facing labor shortages? Show of hands, like all of us, right? 3% of the population went away and they never came, the workforce went away and they never came back. We don't know where they went. I guess they went to Montana. I'm not sure. We have supply chain problems, right? There's just so many things that we're all faced with. So we recognize that cybersecurity is just another thing you have to deal with, right? So we try to make it easy. I like the easy button. Who likes the easy button? Okay, easy button. So with that, the other thing I wanted to share with you is continue to have the conversations with your insurance agent. Continue to have the conversations with your account manager and your IT provider so that you are aware. That's how you're going to cure the fear. And other thing I wanted to share, many of you are already connected, is, if any of you transition from networking events to LinkedIn, how many people are using LinkedIn as their networking now? Right? Because for a lot of you, right? Because you couldn't go anywhere, right? So LinkedIn is a huge community. As you know, Liam speaks nationally on cybersecurity. He's a sought-after speaker. He's done some TV shows. He's done different things. He's very humble, so you don't hear a whole lot about that. But he is followed by many, many people, and so he posts regularly on LinkedIn on things that you might want to know to keep you kind of what's going on in pulsing. So if you're not connected with Liam or MIS on LinkedIn, please do that. That's another resource for you as well. And connect with us as also on LinkedIn. We share a lot of those same things. We boil it down, make it really, really simple, because he's really, really technical. Closing remarks for you. We appreciate you. We thank you for being a customer. We thank you for your time and attention today. And if you have questions, don't stress. Call MIS.